In this video, I'm going to focus in on the higher forms. There's a separate video dealing with the bottom half of the divided line, the visible world. There's yet another video that focuses in pretty much exclusively on the lower forms. So this one's just going to be on the higher forms. And then there's yet another video to come that touches on the form of the good and actually compares the divided line, as I've sketched it out here, to the myth of the cave, otherwise known as the allegory of the cave. So for now, we'll just deal with the higher forms. Form obviously is a crucial term. What does that mean? I'm hesitant to give you a formal definition just yet. So by higher forms, Plato refers to dialectic. That obviously too is a key term. I'm hesitant just to give you a formal definition right off the bat. So dialectic is the prime example of higher forms. And when it comes to dialectic, for now, we can think of math, and if you've taken Philosophy 120, if you've taken a formal logic class, that would suffice as well. So be sure to put this into perspective. Plato is attempting to overcome sophistry. This idea that everything's subjective, everything's just a matter of opinion or perspective. And right off the bat, math would give us a pretty powerful counter to sophistry. And in fact, let me sketch out here 6 different claims that we can make about pure mathematics. So this will be a long list, but keep in mind the objective is to counter sophistry. And we'll keep this real simple. Take, as an example, a claim like 2 and 2 equals 4. First of all, that is obviously something that's true. And remember, again, where we started. He's trying to counter sophistry. And so we began with a definition of knowledge versus a definition of opinion. Opinion isn't either true or false. It's just a matter of purely subjective taste. But for knowledge, it can't be false. How can you know something that's false? That just isn't so. Knowledge has to be true. And so it is with respect to 2 and 2 equals 4. That's obviously a true mathematical statement. So I'll just put a check there. We can justify this. In order to know something, you've got to be able to back it up. You've got to be able to explain it. And a claim like this, something you all learned way back in elementary school, this can be explained by way of an instructor. We can demonstrate for you that 2 and 2 does in fact equal 4. So we can check that one off as well. Further, knowledge has to endure. An opinion can change, and for that matter, it can change for no particular reason at all. But knowledge, we just can't change whenever we feel like it. And if ever there was one, that in fact is an eternal truth. That was true in Plato's time, it's true today, it'll be true 10,000 years from now, or 10 trillion years from now. Again, that is an enduring truth. Claim number 4. In doing pure mathematics, you're no longer relying on the senses. And remember, that's the overall path to knowledge. Let me refer back down to the divided line here. The path to knowledge starts at the bottom, but we gradually extrapolate up. So in doing pure mathematics, sure, you've got to get the project up off the ground. You have to come to understand numbers and addition and subtraction a little bit. But once the project is up off the ground, you can do mathematics just inside of your head, just inside of the mind's eye, if you will. No longer relying on the senses. And that, let me attach that piece to the very definition of dialectic. Dialectic is a purely intellectual discipline, indicative of Plato's rationalism. We know via the intellect, think the intelligible world. So dialectic is a purely intellectual discipline, and that's going to be the case for math. And as a purely intellectual discipline, dialectic no longer relies on the senses. And again, that's the basic movement from bottom to top. We remove ourselves from the changing world of the senses, from the visible world, and we come to understand a higher plane of existence. Claim number 5. Math is a purely objective domain. 2 and 2 equals 4 isn't a matter of subjective opinion. By objectivity, I just mean opinion doesn't count. Your math class is not an opinion class. It is, again, an objective domain. And again, this is a successful counter to sophistry. Not everything is subjective. Math, for one, is objective. And now claim number 4. This might be the most important one on the list. This is kind of Plato's grand insight. Math is, to say the least, a powerful tool that we can use to figure out the structure of the universe. Math is a purely intellectual discipline which no longer relies on the senses. Fine, you can do it inside of your head. But that doesn't reduce math to just being a purely mental exercise. Math, again, claim 6, is a powerful tool that we can use to figure out the structure of the universe. So let me actually go so far as to give you an example of this from Plato's time. This is an equation I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's not from Plato, from Pythagoras. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Math is a powerful tool that we can use to figure out the structure of the universe. There's Plato's grand insight. So if we set up a right triangle and we have 2 of the distances here, we can use this equation to calculate the third distance. And let me slide back over here, claim 4. We can do that independent of observation. If we have two inputs, we can calculate the third distance without having to measure it off, to pace it off, to build a ridiculously long measuring tape. We can figure this out independent of the senses. So math goes right at the top, excluding obviously the form of the good, and proves to be a successful counter, so says Plato anyway, to sophistry. So let me leave you with one last small, simple example. I've gone ahead and printed this off here. So let's focus in on the top half, where I've claimed here that this is not a circle. You can all, of course, recognize it as being a circle, but to borrow lingo from Plato here, this is an imperfect copy of a circle. This is pretty darn circular, it looks pretty darn good, but imagine that this were still on my computer, I printed it off, but imagine a digital circle, and if I were to really zoom in on a cross-section of the circle, eventually I would come across nothing more than a loosely connected series of dots, individual pixels. If I really zoom in on this, it's not at all a circle. It's an imperfect copy of a circle. And not just this generic instance, but so it would be for any circle that you might encounter in the visible world. Any circle that you might be able to see is nothing but an imperfect copy of the form. The form is not something you can touch, it's an abstract entity, but again for Plato, this is reality as it truly is. So instead of that being a circle, again from around the time of Plato, there's a much better understanding of a circle from Euclid. Again, the idea is that we come to understand reality not with the senses, that's going to get us imperfect copies, but with the mind. And if you can truly grasp that definition of a circle with your mind, with the intellect, then you truly know what a circle is, as opposed to pointing to this and saying that's a circle. That's an imperfect copy of a circle. To really understand what a circle is, we need to use not the senses, but the intellect. So I'll cut this one a little short. As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to stop by or send me an email. Thanks.